if something's all 5 star, people are wary of that because they think that's fake. It has to be like 4.6, 4.7. Yeah. But if it's too fine, it's like, nah, this is doctored or this is fake. A lot of people also ask me, can you get a celebrity to help me with this brand? But now you're seeing founders become influencers.
Yeah, going from that Fenty insight, that aha moment, how do you ensure when you're co-creating brands that it's not just business, but also solving real problems?
When I saw Rihanna launch Fenty, I was like, oh, just another celebrity beauty brand launch. But she created it because there was a real need for it and there was a real story around it.
Hailey Bieber's road.
Yeah.
What one or two things they've done right that founders can take on? After you've built that organic flywheel, how do you get it to more audiences, especially in a world where discovery is changing?
Today, we're sitting down with someone who is quietly building the future of culture-led consumer brands, David, the founder of Creative Control Ventures, a venture studio redefining what it means to build with creators. In this conversation, we're going to get into the real, the raw, behind the scenes of what it actually takes to build a consumer brand. David, it's so good to have you here with us on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, no, really looking forward to this conversation. You started out in corporate. You then had a record label. Tell us about your journey, how you went from the world of corporate, record label, to now running Creative Control Ventures and building with celebrities such as Kraft and many others.
Yeah, no, it's actually an interesting story. I actually started in product, so it's a full 360. So when I left uni, I did my master's, and then I went to a company called Viacom. And Viacom is a conglomerate, so under them they have different brands. So you have your Nickelodeons, your MTV, your Comedy Central, your Channel 5. And I worked in a department called Consumer Products, which I knew nothing about, but I realized that a bulk of money actually came from products. So you'll see the TV shows, you'll see the movies, you'll see the EMAs, etc. But a lot of the money that's driving their revenue is the product. So like SpongeBob bags or Power Rangers pencil cases. And essentially I was in that department. So I really understood about how to monetize IP from a very early age. And yeah, I think that was it wasn't an internship, but it was a good internship to understand about product, IP, how to build it, how to police it at the start of my career. And then I've had what can you say, unconventional career journey. So it wasn't very linear. So after that, I got headhunted to work at a sports agency to head up its commercial department. So essentially what we were doing was going and finding brand partnership deals. So the agency's main bulk of work was to do the on-field contracts, so signing the deals. And my role essentially was to see how we can commercialize the IP of our footballers. So if that's from like book deals, boot deals, TV show deals, etc. That was my role essentially. And again, it was fun. Got to work with all of these personalities. And then I think it was a good understanding of talent and how you can really monetize them. Obviously, I don't productize human beings, but essentially that's what we was doing, valuing the IP in terms of who they are, the fans that they had, and essentially partnering with brands to extract that value from them, to be honest. Then decided that it was time for me to jump on the entrepreneurial bandwagon. Made some money working for this football agency, and decided to go into music. Don't ask me why. It wasn't like I thought about it or anything like that. I just thought that, I mean, I've done media, entertainment, I've done sports. Now it's time for me to tackle music, because I actually wanted to have like a full experience of the whole entertainment world. Yeah, it was my idea to go into music because I think what was really, really funny is that CCV was probably born back then, because my idea was that I wanted to work with celebrities or people in the entertainment industry in a way that was kind of like a VC incubator. I didn't know what that looked like, but that was like what my idea was. And back then it was all about like one thing that I really needed to have was the contacts and relationships in the entertainment industry because it is quite a closed world. So my thinking was that work in media entertainment, know how contacts, work in sports, again, know how contact, and then music was the last frontier essentially to work in that space and get like contacts and relationship. So it was a good, even though I said it was unconventional, it was like there was method to the madness, I would say, in terms of that. So yeah, I went into music, started a record label, and funny enough, I saw the music industry quite different. how I saw Y Combinator, how they would obviously find promising startups, take them through the incubator or the accelerator process, and then at the end of it, like present them to like investors. But the good thing was that like if you went to Y Combinator, it was a very good chance that you would get the investment at the end of it. And essentially, I saw music in a similar way where you would find all of this talented artists, but they don't have the infrastructure or know how to really like drive it. Because we didn't have the power, I would say, as the major record label, it was then essentially find talented artists, invest in them, provide some infrastructure for them. Once they start to get traction, then partner with a label to actually take it to that
Interesting.
next level. So that was the idea. And then obviously we did that and we were doing it for 9 months. At the time, Spotify was coming in and I think everyone was a little bit scared of Spotify and how to really work it. So people didn't really understand it. But I think one of the things that I understood was that if humans have too much choices, they can't make a choice. It's the reason why radio is such a big thing. And then obviously Spotify came where it's presenting this platform where you can listen to like millions of different music. But again, you get into that place where I've got millions of music, but what do I listen to? So that's why playlist was a big thing because people still want to curate experiences of music. And I realized that a lot of people were still driven by these playlists. So my thinking again was if I was able to get our artists on these like popular playlists, it would drive streams. So that's what we did. We obviously built relationships with the people at Spotify, Apple Music, or Beast Music at that time. And then obviously he was talking to them about like getting our artist songs on those playlists. And it was a great hack because in 1 week it was like easy to get 1 million streams like that. And I think a lot of labels were like, right, like who's this indie getting all of these million streams? So they were wondering like, and you know these companies, like if they see someone doing good, they want to get involved or realize or understand how they did it. So within 9 months we were doing that. And then we got approached by every single label, like UK, US. We got flew out to LA. We got wined and dine, as they say. Yeah, every single label, like Warner Music, Sony Music, Universal Music, and all the sub labels of them were like meeting us. So it was a great experience, to be honest. And we decided to go with music at the time with a guy called Max Lizada, who I think for me was like one of the smartest guys in music because one thing that I do is that I like to look at industry and see it from a different lens. So when I talked about the music industry, but seeing it from like how Y Combinator have done it with startups, he was always talking about attention. And he was saying that we're not fighting against other artists. So you've got like your Beyonce's or your whatever. He said, we're not fighting for people to listen to a Lizzo song or a Cardi B song or Beyonce song. We're fighting for attention. And at the time, again, TikTok was coming up as well. And he was like, we have to fight against people like watching TikToks or podcasts and stuff like that. And obviously you're seeing that now where music consumption probably is not as high as it was before because there's other forms of people consuming stuff. Nowadays, people don't listen to albums, they listen to podcasts, like 3 hour podcasts, or people watch TikToks and stuff like that. So that's why even the music industry now, I think it's challenging because there's so many different other alternatives that people are using in their free time. So I liked what he was saying there and decided that that would be the label that we go for. So we signed a label imprint deal with Warner Music Group, which essentially was rather than us going through that process, finding our artists, developing them, putting money into them, etc., and finding a label, essentially it was like more streamlined. So once we did all that process, then we had music to like really upstream it and then really take it to another level. And we was there for 3 years, but even though the working with them was, I would say it helped a lot in terms of finances, infrastructure, and even like credibility as well. Like when you're going to an artist and saying we got Warner Music, and then when you're saying that we're just an indie, like they're really really excited if you say Warner Music. So it was easier for us to get talent. But I think there was a real clash between this entrepreneurial mindset and this big corporate, and we were clashing a lot of the time because again, $1 billion company. There's certain frameworks that you have to go through to get things done. Whereas we're obviously a startup, nimble, fast. If you want to sign an act, you sign them. But with Warner, like if you want to sign an act, oh, you have to go through this process. And I think it really killed my entrepreneurial spirit, to be honest. Even though it was our label, it didn't really feel like it was our label because we were still under the guise of like Warner and going through their whole process. So it was really challenging as an entrepreneur that was like, not want to say free spirit, but like nimbleness of what we were doing.
I'm curious, what's the one advice, like if you could go back, what's the one advice you'd give yourself if you could do it all again?
The one advice I would say is I would say like trust my gut more, to be honest. I feel like a lot of the things they were saying was data driven and this and that. But there were a lot of things that I feel like I missed out on. If I was stronger in my conviction, and saying this needs to happen and why it needs to happen, then I think it would have been a lot better. I think at the time we was young, and would I say I got imposter syndrome? I wouldn't say imposter syndrome, but I felt like the brand and power of Warner Music really was they would go, they've been in the industry for 10 years, 15 years, and you would always default to their position of thinking rather than me going, no, my gut saying this is the right thing to do and I should really be fully convicted on my decision on that, and not just because someone's got 15 years on me, just believe what they're saying. Industries like that move so quickly. Like what I was doing back then is so different now. Like even when I talk to people in the music industry, they say it's so different to how it was when I was there. So, and I think like being able to be like nimble and seeing trends very quickly and be fully convicted on that, I think was our USP, to be honest.
Amazing.
And yeah, so was there for 3 years and got, would I say, yeah, got tired mentally. I was drained, like really drained, to the point where I hated music. Because every time I would listen to music, I don't think it was because of the label, but every time I listened to music, it was such a formulaic thing. So I would listen to it. I was like even stuff like the mixing or the hi-hats or stuff like that, I would be looking at everything, or why did the lyrics like that, or the structure of the song. Like every single song I was listening to, I was thinking it from an analytical point of view. Like it was crazy to the point where I couldn't just listen to enjoy. I was listening to, oh, they did this. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it's so funny you say this because anytime I watch Shark Tank, people are like, "Oh, this is so fun." I'm like, "No, this is my day. I don't want to."
And I'm like, what are they doing here?
Yeah. It's so crazy because people love music, but yeah, me, it was too analytical to be for me. So yeah, got jaded and decided that it was time for us to leave that and to sell that. So we obviously went through the process of selling the business, and it was a good experience because again, it's crazy because this obviously came from your head. This is an idea that formulated in your head and it's coming to life, and then someone is acquiring it. Like I think obviously you see some people selling stuff like that, but when you really deep and think like something that's come from your head and ideas come from your head and you've gone through the whole process, the ups and downs, and then now it's time to sell it. It's like even though I was happy, it was such a relief.
Oh, really? I thought you'd say bittersweet, but you were like fresh air.
Breath of fresh air. It was just like, I think it was, to me, it was like, this chapter is done now. This chapter of my life is over. And that was the ending part of this chapter of my life. And then again, how my life turns is like the best thing happened in terms of selling the business, and the worst thing ever happened to me where I lost my little brother. Again, it was an interesting dynamic because obviously coming from South London, I wouldn't say we were poor. Like my mum and my dad tried a lot for us to have like a decent childhood, but it wasn't like in the best area or nothing like that. And being able to serve my parents coming from Nigeria, coming to this country, all you're thinking about is getting out of the hood, like trying to make something of yourself, trying to make as much money, etc. With all this hustler mentality. Luckily, I did it the legal way, but yeah, it was all this hustle mentality, trying to make as much money as you can. So being able to accomplish that, but then obviously my brother passing away, and then realized everything's fragile. Like the most money in the world doesn't really matter. And I think for me, it was like after my brother passed away, it was really me thinking about like, if I died tomorrow, what would people say about me? And the ringing thing was like, oh, he was a label owner, or he sold his business, or he done that. And for me, that wasn't really something to be happy about or proud about. A lot of the things I'd done was like a selfish ambition, but it was nothing really I really gave to the world, I felt. And in my head, I was like, I'd rather have less money, but have more impact than have loads of money and have no impact. I went through a journey, did counseling and stuff like that, where it was like, I really wanted to impact the world in some sort of way. And obviously we set up my brother's foundation, which for me, it was a part of continuing his legacy, which I'm happy that's happened, and obviously impacting young people. But in business, like I really wanted to do something that was really like impactful. And obviously how work and how God works, I had a call with one of my friends as well in this period, and she was raving about Fenty Beauty, like talking about like how amazing Fenty Beauty is, all of that kind of things. And obviously I saw it and I thought Rihanna, I was like, yeah. But, and obviously working in music as well, merchandising really has a bad name. So when a celebrity brings out something, you usually think they're only bringing it out to make money from their fans. Like that the value for the end consumer is not great. It's just a sign of fandom. And I thought this was just another extension of a brand that she just created something because it's Rihanna, people would buy it. But the value of, or the value of the product wouldn't be great. And she would just say, no, it was amazing, like all that thing. And I was surprised. I was like, why are you so hyped about it? Why are you so excited about it? And she said it was the first brand that made her feel seen. And for me, that was just a powerful thing that she said to me, because it was like, even though we use products in every day of our life, we don't realize the impact products actually has. Like products really change people's day-to-day life. And for me, it was understanding that moment that this product has changed this woman's life. Because obviously with makeup, she used to use like 2 or 3 foundations to get her skin tone. Sometimes when she would go with friends, she told me when she was young, she would go and buy makeup, and all her fairer skinned friends were able to find their foundation, but she wouldn't find it. And sometimes it was kind of like embarrassing for her. And then obviously Fenty Beauty came, and she was able to go into a shop, buy it, not have to mix it, and really find her tone. And obviously with makeup, you understand what it does. It makes women feel like confident, like beautiful, all of those kind of things. And for me, it was like, raw, like products can actually really make an impact. And obviously with Rihanna being who she is, it had a customer base from day one, and it was good because Rihanna was able to thread through like a storytelling around it. And because I was able to create connections in the like music, sports, entertainment world, for me it was just like it makes sense for there to be like a fusion between celebrities creating products that really had an impact in people's lives. So that was the thesis essentially for CCV, and that was in 2020. Didn't start straight away. It was for me like really trying to understand like what's a venture, because I was reading like what is the best way to do it, and I saw like venture studio model, and I was doing a lot of research about venture studios, and I saw like how other venture studios have been made in terms of, there was a lot of like tech venture studios, but I didn't really see a consumer venture studios. And I was like trying to take like the business model a lot from those kind of businesses and try to implement it into what CCV is, to be honest.
And did you start CCV immediately after you left the record label, or was there a period where you left and then you decided to start CCV?
Yeah, no, there was definitely a period, because obviously when you sell your business, it's you have this like another thing, you have a lot of thinking time. And I understand when people sell their business where they say they go on holiday, they do all of that kind of thing, and they get bored. Because I
Yeah.
think behavior is to create and build. Our native behavior is not just to create something, sell it, and then relax. Like it's to build. And I think we get a lot of pleasure of building. Money is a byproduct of what we create, essentially. So for me, it was always, I was always going to build something else. It was just like, what was the next thing? And then my brother passed away, meaning like for me, it wasn't just going to be something that was just money driven. It had to be something that was really impactful, that if I was to go, even if I was to go, at least I can say, oh, my business had impact in people in these ways. And then again, when the idea or the thesis came into my head, it was then like, okay, you need to do a lot of research in terms of this space. Because again, not knowing nothing about consumer, apart from like my first job, nothing about building a venture studio, I had to learn a lot. I had to speak to a lot of different people to try and understand like what is the right business to build and create.
Yeah, and I think that what's really interesting is going from that Fenty insight, that aha moment that, brands could be so purposeful and impactful. How do you ensure when you're co-creating brands that it's not just business, but it's also driving meaningful change and solving real problems?
Yeah, like it's interesting because we say no more than we say yes to a lot of like
VC
people that
model.
come to us, because a lot of people will see the successes and come to us and say, I want to create this, I want to create that, I want to. But when you're thinking about it, it's so easy to go yes, but building the business is hard. It's not an easy thing, and especially like a consumer business. There's so many different facets to it to build a successful one. I know obviously there's headlines of Road Beauty and stuff like that who have like made billions, but there's a lot of brands in the graveyard as well. So for us, one, it starts from like, why is it you want to create this? Because when you launch it, the story has to be so strong that people believe it as one. And it's not just again, when I saw Rihanna launch Fenty, I was like, oh, just another celebrity beauty brand launch. But she created it because there was a real need for it. You can understand why she created it, and there was a real story around it. And for us, there has to be a passion. It's either you're going through that problem and you want to solve it, or you have a real passion for that area for us to even work with you. And then two, like for us, even the verticals that we're in, we wouldn't do anything that's going to harm someone. So we wouldn't do anything like in tobacco, or there was even one celebrity who wanted us to do vapes and stuff like that. Even they wanted us to do natural vapes. But for me, it was like, even if it's natural vapes, there's still this behavior that you are curated from someone. So even if they start with natural and go into something stronger. So even though that was a better solution than what's out there, for me, I think creating a behavior of people doing vapes was not right, and we said no to that. So for us, it has to be something that really is like, or we want to do something that we also got approached by a big celebrity to do sweets. And again, you can try and do better for you sweets, but for us at the time, it was like, sweets are not great. So for us, it has to be something that is really going to impact people in a positive way for us too. And then there has to be some sort of impact level. So how are we going to help communities with our brand? If that's a percentage of our profits to organizations, if it's free products to people who are in desperate needs, but there has to be some sort of community aspect that we add to all of our brands.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a lot about like that impact and I guess defensibility in the CPG because you said it before, many brands go to die, and for every product, there's probably five alternatives. Store
Exactly.
brands are also bringing their own expression to the view. 30% of brands are store brands in the CPG world. But what I
Yeah.
think is very interesting with what you've done is the impact play is a core of what you do, but then also it creates almost like a defensibility in the consumer space because then people who buy it can relate to that product and they can see the meaning behind it. You explained the Fenty example. If there was a founder listening to this, building in this space, how and they are passionate about, just like you, creating some impact in the world. Given you've launched impactful brands, you've launched like Nala's Baby, launched Sips. I'm curious, like, how would you tell them to think about it, balancing that impact, but then also like commercial viability, defensibility in a very saturated space?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because I spoke about this about Ren. Obviously, Unilever decided to close Ren, and Ren was a pioneer in terms of clean beauty. Their purpose was like, we wanted to demystify all of these beauty brands that have been put in like all of these chemicals that are not probably great for you and create something that was clean. They were focused on that and not really focused on like what's happening nowadays in terms of like a lot of people now are doing clean beauty. And I think, as you rightly mentioned, I don't think they really created defensibility anymore. I think they just relied on their legacy. So even though I bang about purpose, I think purpose is important. You still have to also balance that out with commercial viability. And also the product has to be great. So even though you're saying, for example, I want to create something that is purposeful, impactful, helping people, etc. You can say you want to do that, but you have to balance it with the product has to also have that as well. So, for example, with Nala's, which is a great example, it was the reason why Nala's was formed was because Sasha, and obviously they're celebrities. And one thing I always say is that at the end of the day, you can understand the reason why because they're parents. They wanted their best for their child now at the time. And they went into store, they saw Johnson and Johnson, etc., and saw all of these brands. When they tried to think that wasn't great, they were seeing like 8, 7s, etc. And they were like, how come there isn't any brand that's like 0 rated? So they were again on a mission to create something that was 0 rated. And
What
during
does
that
zero
process,
rated mean?
so that means it's clean. So that means like there's no like perfume, parables, or anything that's like gonna be harmful to your skin. So people with sensitive skin, people with eczema, etc., can use the thing. Essentially, it's an app called Think Dirty, and there's another one where you scan with the barcode, and essentially 0, green is amazing. When you get to 8, 7, 9, 10, etc., that's bad. Red, bad. And they were like confused why there was nothing in the stores or shelves like that. On their mission to create it, they were so meticulous in terms of making sure the product was like they went through every ingredient. They wasn't just like the manufacturer say, "Oh yeah, do this." They'll be like, "No, let's see everything." And if there was an ingredient they didn't like, no, out. Even if it was maybe better, they said no. So for them, it was like, regardless of the purpose, it was like we wanted to make sure the product was like A1. It can stand up against your Johnson Johnson's, your this and your that. And another thing they said, which was like interesting because a lot of brands in our vertical are more expensive. One thing they said is that we want to make this because it's not the cheapest, we won't say the cheapest, but the most accessible brand. So where you're paying like 10, 12, 15, 20 pounds from other brands, we wanted to make sure this was affordable for people who wanted to use it. So for me, it was like if we're able to create a mass product, commercially might not be great in the beginning, but what you're going to do is build loyalty, build customers who want to keep using it because I'm not going to spend £15 a week on product or a month on product. I'd rather spend £5, £6 and get all of the products rather than doing another thing. So for us, it was like really thinking about how are we going to make sure people buy this brand as well, and not just create the best brand and make it £20. No, like roughly, obviously cost of living, etc. Let's try and make this brand as affordable as possible. We were going in on our manufacturers to make sure they were pushing down the prices and stuff like that, and also making sure that the product was amazing. So For us, it was like, if you buy a product, you would think like, why is it so cheap? Because
Yeah.
the value that we're giving you is more than you're paying for it.
And I guess when you think about consumer brands more generally, like it's very tough to launch a consumer brand, and you've been behind, Sips and Nala, played a big role in those two journeys. What were some of the biggest hurdles along the way for anyone that's listening that's thinking about starting a consumer brand? Were there any aspects that were, harder than you anticipated, for example? And, what advice would you give to those looking to build consumer brands?
Now it's like there's so many different brands now, so it's congested with loads of different brands. So one thing I would say is that as a founder, your story is really, really important. Because a lot of people also ask me about, oh, can I get this celebrity or can you get this celebrity to help me with this brand? But now you're seeing founders become influencers essentially. And you're seeing a lot of these founders who like Amarat Plant Made is a great one where she's talking about a problem. It was like there was nothing out there that was for me, and I created a product because of that. So I think the founder story is really, really important. So if you have something that you're personally struggling with and you're like, I can't find anything that's great for me and I want to create something, document that story because people relate to these kind of things. People relate to honesty, especially with the rise of AI and stuff like that. People actually relate to honesty and truth and human connection, all that kind of thing. So I would say get your founder story. Cash flow is super, super important. Like super, super important. You can be the most successful brand, but you can fail because you haven't got your cash flow right. And it's one thing that we had to really understand truly because for us, a lot of things were easy because we had a celebrity. So I won't even lie to you and say I'm going through the same journey as some other people. So it was easy to get investment, easier to get retailers on board, all of that kind of thing. But cash flow was super important. Like even understanding like the debt instruments that we can use, invoice financing, stock financing, all of those kind of things are really, really important to make sure that your cash flow is on point. So I would say make sure, even if you can't pay for someone to do it, like really understand cash flow, really understand like how long it takes for me to get my product. So like when you pay your manufacturer, how long is that lead time? Then if you are going into retail, how long is that lead time to get paid? Because you could pay something and then it could be 12 weeks before you get the product. And then the retailers say, we pay you like 60, 75 days once you get your product into our depot. So it could be like 6 months before you actually get your money back from what you've initially invested. So making sure you get your cash flow is really, really important. And also like there's so many different factors to making you successful. Like don't just focus on one channel. So you can think of like paid ads. People used to just focus like paid ads. As long as I get paid ads right, I can make some. And that used to work, but obviously now cost of acquisition has gone through the roof. Like spending money on ads is more expensive nowadays. So paid ads is obviously one channel. Other channels like email is super, super important. I think people underutilize email, to be honest. And the good thing about email is that you've essentially paid for that customer through your paid ads. You've got them on your email and you're not really paying to acquire them anymore. All you're doing is just making more money for them. So the lifetime value of that customer grows if you get your email right. And there's obviously like influencer, affiliates. There's so many different things I would say, but I would say even though there is focus on 2 or 3 channels that you really want, and I said that's why I said the founder story is really important because you can grow organically. I know founders who have grown all of their things from TikTok, just from organic content, from making hundreds of £1,000s per month just from doing organic content on TikTok. Those are the things I would say is like it is competitive, it is hard, but I feel like if you've got something that really resonates with people, a product with people, that you can make it through, to be honest.
I'd love to talk about that point on actually the influencer because there's a lot of talk of like celebrity brands, but I'm seeing the reverse, where people with mass followings on social media are now thinking about launching brands and then launching CPG brands. You have folks like Tabitha Brown, like from the US, started
Yeah.
with Food on Spoke, and then all of a sudden she has all of these CPG lines with Target. You even have here in the UK as well. But I'm curious, like for folks who may be listening, who have maybe an online following or a community or some kind of audience that already relates to their personal brand, and they're looking to transition into selling some kind of product or creating a brand that begins to monetize through that channel. What is your advice to them? How should they think about making that transition? What mistakes should they try to avoid that are very common when people try to do this?
One, you have to understand why your audiences are following you. So the product category that you go into, I think is super, super important. If you don't drink and you launch an alcohol line, that does not make sense because people can't align with what you're doing. So I would one say understand like what the product category you want to go into. And then again, I think research is underutilized. Again, for example, if you want to do a journal, so many different journals out there. So I would look at in the space and go, okay, cool, there's all of these journals that are out there now. What is something that I feel like I can do that will be different or specialized that will relate to my community? And it could be something specific as much as, for example, Grace Beverly has done one,
Yeah.
and it's specifically for like kind of industry want to like, be more productive and all that kind of thing. So I would really go into the space and go, what is it something that could be my USP or something that's a bit different from everyone out there? And then yes, utilize organic content. Don't make it like this is an ad, but go through the journey and talk about like, I know guys, you've been following me for X amount of years, you know I'm passionate about X, and I've started to create this, and bring everyone on that journey. Bring them through the process of the ups and downs, all that kind of thing. I think that's really important to bring people through that whole story and journey, to be honest. Utilize your audience or leverage them when you are speaking to manufacturers or when you're speaking to retailers. Communicate your proposition, communicate your value, communicate why working with you would be really important. We were able to use that to get great opportunities with manufacturers. Manufacturers always have this suite of IP. And when you say, oh, we're doing something with X, this could be a big talent, all of a sudden they want to bring you everything that they've created or worked with. Retailers, again, one thing that was good with Nas is that Nas is not a black brand, by the way. The good thing is the culture really supported it. And with Boots, I think they saw the halo effect. So you saw a lot more people who might have not gone to Boots before go to Boots, especially first year when we had exclusivity. What that does is you might buy Nala's, but then you might say, oh, I need sunscreen. Oh, I need moisture. I need something else. And they obviously saw the halo effect. So talk about your community with retailers and stuff like that, and talk about how potentially a halo can happen, especially if it's an audience that doesn't really go into their retailer before, how that could help them in terms of market share in certain categories and stuff like that. I think that's really important too.
On successfully scaling, I know that, Nala obviously secured distribution with Boots pretty early on in the journey. And then obviously after that exclusivity period, it's now expanded way beyond that. Thinking about how, anyone with a consumer brand can really think about, managing scaling production, distribution, any tips on that in particular?
Scaling is again is a science, to be honest, because there's so many moving parts, like your operations and your finance in check, like really, really important. And it's not a thing where you're like, because I'm trying to think of it in a way like if someone's a single person, I would also say like get help. This is not a one person brand. Like once you have enough money to start hiring people, like hire people and hire great people, even if it costs a little bit more, hire them, because honestly, trust me, it helps massively. And we're seeing hiring people is even talking about people like operations person, like someone who's going to make sure your product gets to the depot on time, because there's so many issues that happen. Depot rejects it, or the van goes to a wrong place, or there's so many different things. Like even when you're dropping products to a depot at a retailer, they give you a specific time to do it. If you don't do it in that time, you miss your slot. And then if you do something late, you get fined. Like there's so many different things to make sure that you get on point. So getting someone like an operation, also someone who's doing like your stock. Again, like if you're working in retail, it might be different if you're just doing DTC, but you don't know how quick things, like with Nala's, like we essentially gave them, I think it was 8 weeks of stock, and it sold out in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
So sometimes you can't even manage the
I,
like the
I actually
marks.
remember that because I would go
Yeah,
into like,
and people
oh,
couldn't find it. Yeah, so even there was mistakes like that where we can even understand why it went so quickly, but we have someone who is actually checking stock and making sure that your stock is on the shelf all the time and making sure you're ordering at the right time. Because if you have to order something in manufacturing, it takes 12 weeks, and but you have to get to a retailer, all of those kind of mass kind of things, you have to understand that and make sure like, okay, we need to order something in May, so we get it in July, we need to get on point. And yeah, financing is super important. Making sure you get your finances right, because things happen so quick. Invoices from here, invoices, and if you're not on top of it, cash flow could go wrong. You could be out of money. All of those kind of things can happen. So I think it's getting those things right and getting the right people. And it doesn't mean you have to hire them full time. A lot of people now are doing like fractional roles, fractional COO, fractional CFO. All of those kind of things are really important to help you like grow your brand. And again, sometimes you're limited in what you know, and it's good to have someone who's actually gone through that process to help you go, okay, you need to pull this lever or do this or do that. All of that is so important too.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about IP, and it's on this matter of scaling because you could start as a small unknown brand and then you start getting some kind of notoriety, and then you cross hairs with some IP infringement. I know that the value of a brand is closely tied to its IP. Like, I'll give an example. The lipstick I use is by a lipstick brand in the US called Bossy Cosmetics. Love the founder. The entire like brand, similar to what you said, was that it is a brand, essentially it's like for the ambitious woman, built the brand for the ambitious women. And now, for the past few years, since she started getting some notoriety, Hugo Boss, an unaffiliated brand in the beauty space, sued for IP infringement. She's still in that conversation right now, fighting a big company for IP rights to a word that's not exactly exact. She earlier she filed for trademark, did all the right things. So I guess maybe what I'm asking is for every founder who's potentially listening, thinking of a CPG brand or already building one, how do you comprehensively think about IP to catch the issues that may come up in the future? What are the quick tips, one or two tips that they can have in mind to take away from this conversation?
So again, IP is like I would say I'm in love with IP because I did a master's in entertainment law, and a lot of my thing was around like IP. And obviously, working at MTV or Viacom, essentially your IP people are trying to misuse or infringe on it a lot. So I've looked at it from a brand, looking at smaller things. One thing I would say is trademark your name. That is super important. Like search it and also search it, not just in the UK. If it's UK, US, Europe, search for trademark because it's really important, and the classes as well. So even if you've got, example, a lipstick brand, but you said you want to go into other categories, think about where you want this brand to go and register for all the categories. Even if you don't use them now, register for all that you do. It is an expensive exercise, but as you said, it saves you so much in case someone comes in later who might say, oh no, this is our IP or this is our thing, or even someone who tries to infringe on your own IP, you're able to do that. So yeah, go look on ipo.gov.uk, search for the trademark or search for the name that you want to do, and also search for like all the categories or the classes as they call it you want to go into and see if anyone's got that name. If anyone hasn't, register it and register it quick, to be honest. I know there's a lot of like lawyers and stuff like that that charge astronomical fee to do it. I don't want to take money from lawyers and stuff like that because they're good. But I would say it's not as hard as you think, to be honest. Again, I've heard like founder stories who, I think even Amma, who I was talking about before, I think she had the same issue when she had something called Planted and she had to change it to Plant Made and she went through all of that. And what you don't want to do is create all of this goodwill, product, website, all of this you've done, and then someone comes and says, sorry, you're using my IP. And the thing is, I don't know if they do this, but I think they do it. Some brands, I think they see it early and go, she hasn't got enough money now. We're just going to wait until you get some traction and then go, okay, cool, now it's time. There's a bit of traction, a bit of money. Now we're going to sue.
Wow. And maybe a follow on that. This one is on SEO and search. So you mentioned earlier, like D2C. I know that there are probably brands that you have to start direct to consumer before you unlock partnerships that make it make sense for you on a scale perspective. But whilst you're still directly delivering to your customers, search is changing. Keyword optimization for your brand, if you've created a very good brand, is now being discovered. And we have the evolution of these dark channels. I guess GPT is changing how we think about search. Google is changing. I would love any tips on after you've built that organic flywheel. How do you get it to more audiences of your like niche audience, especially in a world where discovery is changing? How would you recommend that consumer founders who are thinking about this explore that?
Cool. That's an interesting question. In terms of like getting into like niches audiences, is that I think there's channels that you should look at. We acquired a brand recently, and again, we went through the whole like evaluating all of their different channels, all of their social medias and stuff like that. So you've obviously got the big ones like your Instagrams, your TikToks, your Twitter, your Snapchat. One that I thought was underutilized was Pinterest. So a lot of women will go, it's to do with like nails. A lot of women will go there for inspo. Yeah. You understand there's a huge audience there that they wasn't tapping into. So I think you have to, that's why I said, like, I think in my post yesterday on LinkedIn, I said that you have to be obsessive of your customer. Like you have to really, and I think in MTV, my manager said to me, is like, when you think about your customer, you have to, like, when they say like be obsessive, you have to know like, what type of things do they read? What type of things do they watch? How do they look on Snap? Like, even like the journey in terms of like, for me, I'm so big on customer journey and the psychology of customer journeys. So I'll be like, obviously before people would go on Google, search for something, find it, and then tap it. That would usually be the customer journey. Now it's different. Now they might see something on Instagram, they might see an influencer talking about it. So you're like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll get an influencer that is focused on this niche. It doesn't have to be a mega one, it could be a small one. I'll go on Instagram, I see someone talking about this product. Oh, brilliant. And there's two ways that people would go. So they might go on Google and search for you. And then you have to look at, okay, cool. The first thing they're searching for is Trustpilot or review site. So they go on
Yeah.
Trustpilot and go, okay, what are the reviews? And they'll see the reviews and go, okay, cool. And the good thing is, and this is crazy, again, this is what I think about psychology. If something's all 5-star, people are wary of that because they think that's right. It has to be like 4.6, 4.7. Yeah. It's crazy how people think, but if it's 2.5, it's like, nah, this is doctored or this is fake.
It's
But it's
AI.
like 4.7, there's a couple of bad ones. I like it. And then people go on TikTok and search for it because with Google is one dimensional. You'll see words about it. But with TikTok, you'll see other people using it. So again, even though you might get, let's say, a macro influencer on Instagram who's got a big following that'll give you reach, on TikTok, you might get micro ones because again, you don't want to see a big celebrity talking about your brand on TikTok. You actually want to see ordinary people who have like 200 followers, 300 followers, because again, if you see big celebrities on TikTok, you might think, oh, again, they've paid for it. But if you see loads of different people on TikTok who've got 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000, you go like, oh no, this is real people using it. So then you're going, oh, lots of people are talking about it in a good way. And then you go, okay, cool. I've got TikTok people using it, talking about it great. I've seen Trustpilot people talking about it, using it great. Then now I'm going to purchase the product. So it's like looking at those channels, like again, your Pinterest and even stuff like Facebook groups. They're still like prevalent in terms of your niche. Being part of Facebook groups and stuff like that is interesting. And for us, like with SIPs, the first thing we did wrong is that we tried it mass. And we've got age, millions of followers, loads of people know. We're just going to go. We've got age, 5 SIPs, and that was it. Wrong move. What we should have done is started from the grassroots community route, where now you're seeing the increase of run clubs. So we're like, actually, it's interesting for us to sponsor some run clubs because you've got these communities that are starting to grow really well. So we want to run clubs, we've got like hike clubs because with SIPs, it's like, even though it's a fizzy drink, essentially, it's essentially water. So you can drink it like when you wake up, you can drink it when you're working out, you can drink your thing. And what we thought was like, we want SIPs to be part of like your everyday like life and everything you're doing. So if you're going to a run club, you can go for a run club and drink it. If you're doing hiking, you can drink it. And then one community we found that really loved it was Weight Watchers. These middle-aged women who would drink Weight Watchers because SIPs was zero sin, and zero sin means that they can drink loads of it. So it's like when we found that insight, it was like, okay, cool, we're going to double down on that. We're going to sponsor these Weight Watcher clubs. We're going to get the leaders of these groups to really buy into it and sponsor them and talk about it and stuff like that. And it was interesting. And like one of our biggest audience is these women, these middle-aged women from Weight Watchers who are buying our drinks. And then another thing I would say, especially from UK founders, is that the world is global. Don't just think about the UK. Like, for example, with SIPs, like one of our biggest markets is the Middle East, like Qatar. Because the government is trying to reduce people drinking drinks, we found an opportunity there to really do stuff there. So I would say is, even though you are living in the UK, like how the world has globalized, which it makes it easier to do business in other parts of the world. Don't just think about just the UK, like look at other markets. And there's so many examples of someone doing really well in like Germany, and then because of Germany doing well, it does well in the UK. It might not work in the UK first, but it might work somewhere else, and then you might bring it back to the UK. And I learned that in music because I remember I was speaking to my friend on YouTube, and I was saying like, how do you like really grow your audience? And they were saying again, don't just think about the UK. There's so many different things you can do in emerging markets. And the good thing about emerging markets, if you can deliver or have some infrastructure there, is it's much cheaper. Like even when we were doing like YouTube ads to emerging markets, it was so much cheaper than doing it in the UK. Or even if you're doing Meta ads, so much cheaper to acquire customers than in the UK. So it's all of those kind of things that have helped us think like, okay, cool, like UK is one part. And sometimes it is important to start in UK, especially you want to build a story, but don't forget the world when you are like building out your brand, especially if you can deliver, because obviously product is physical, it's not as easy as tech. If you can have infrastructure there and stuff like that, you can deliver to those customers. Don't just think about the UK as the end all of everything.
I love it.
Now, one thing I'm curious about is like you've obviously played such a huge role behind Nala, behind SIPs, and taken them global, right? What does the future of Creative Control Ventures look like for you?
It's actually changed recently, to be honest. Yeah, it changed recently because when you went like I think like most founders like they not say pivot completely, but I feel like once you're in the thick of things, your thesis or the way you think about the world changes.
It evolves.
Yeah, evolves there. And for us, it was like just being the preeminent celebrity venture builder in the UK, essentially. That was like our goal. But I think with CPG, I think it's such an interesting space. And as I said to you before, I think CPG is really, really important. And again, we get loads of different founders, people in the CPG space, celebrity wants to launch stuff. So we'll always do that. So we'll always like build brands. And again, we've got a suite of different brands that we'll be launching over the next 12 to 24 months, which is good. But I think for us, one thing that we want to start, like, because we started building this engine and it takes a long time to build a brand. Like, even though, even me, I'd be like, hey, you know what? We start today, in 12 months' time, we're going to launch. But again, there's things that happen. It might take 2 years, it might take 3 years. And we've got such a great engine of infrastructure, systems, and stuff like that. Sometimes I think it goes to waste because how our thing works is we create a brand, we launch it, and then we build a team. Because there's so much intricacies, it doesn't make sense for us to keep growing a brand in our house because you miss like different nuances and stuff like that. You need people who have taken a brand from like 5 million to 50 million to really grow that brand. So for us, it was like how do we build an ecosystem for like CPG brands? And yes, we'll have our studio where we're with talent, but we also want to acquire brands. So acquire brands who are doing okay but have hit a ceiling. So financially, or they haven't got the right channels, or they need a celebrity to help them like boost, like acquiring brands and then putting them into our infrastructure. And then also investing in brands. Like I've met so many founders and sometimes I feel sorry for them in terms of like certain things. So I'll try and give advice as much as I can, but sometimes they need that like financial thing or that hookup and stuff like that. And I've done that angel investing, so I've done it like privately, but I think we want to do it like either that us setting up a fund or do it in a different way where we invest in brands that we think are great, like at the early stage, and then help them go through that journey and provide also the services that we do to our celebrity brands as well. And then the last part of that is really focusing on like emerging markets. I don't think the celebrity BG brand space is saturated in the UK and US, but obviously there's a lot of brands that come from there.
Yeah.
What we want to do is create these brands in talent from Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, and Asia. And you're seeing, and obviously, like there's loads of like data points that talk about the global majority growing and stuff like that, and there'll be more product services that are going to be catered to them. So for us, it was like, okay, well, we see this trend, like we want to create these products with these talent, and you're seeing it from a M&A perspective. You're seeing a lot of these conglomerates, but always like acquiring these brands that are catered to like people of color. Obviously, we've seen C80 Foods with PepsiCo, and you see more, and I think there's going to be much more of it because what's happening is these conglomerates are a lot of these data points, and sometimes the incumbent brands they do very bad jobs at catering to people of color. They try to like put a sticker on something that does it just doesn't work. Like you create this brand, you knew that wasn't for us, but you try to do something to make it seem like it's for us. And for us, we're very smart. We understand this isn't for us. So because they're seeing that, they're just gonna see brands that do it and then acquire it. The thing that I just hope is that once they do acquire it, that they have a team that really understand who we are and what caters to us. So that's why we're looking at emerging markets as a piece for us to like look in and create brands in that space with talent who come from those countries and territories.
Interesting. It's funny as you were speaking, it's almost like using, you're pretty much creating these brands that the larger conglomerates are looking for access to. Then those brands become an acquisition strategy for them. And maybe from an exit conversation, there are some founders who actually set out to build impactful brands, but also with the ultimate goal to sell. It's very common in the CPG space. If there was a founder listening right now who is either building a brand or thinking of building a brand with one of the aims to exit in the next, let's say, 5 years, what mental models would you say that they should think about in the creation of the brand from the start?
So one thing that I would say, even when I exited my business is, and I didn't do this because I didn't have a mentor or anything like that, is set up your company like you're going to sell. So that's like have your data ready, like in terms of like getting everything
Day
like
one.
day one. Like every brand we start, data ready from like brand, financials,
I love it.
fundraising, corporate, legal structure. Because the thing is, when you, because of obviously the pain I had with selling, the brand will ask for everything. And you could spend 6 months trying to gather everything together in terms of all the contracts that you signed, all the financials, tax returns, all of that kind of thing. So one thing I would say is get your data, and there's a lot of things online in terms of what are the different folders you should have in your data room. Get your data room right, because it just makes it easier. So sometimes if you got an employment contract, sign in that folder. Financials, you've done it, sign in that folder. And even your financials, your accountant. I know some people try to do it themselves. Don't do it. Do not do that. Find someone to get your financial on point, because when people are acquiring your company, they look through everything. This month was revenue was high, but this was down. Like, why? And you have to all of that, get your financials in point, trademarks. All those things are important because they'll be asking to the trademark, legals, financials, if anything that's happened in the company, all that kind of. Get your data room ready from day one. So that once you need document, whatever, you can put it in there. How I think it's reverse engineer it. If you create a brand to sell, I would be like, similar to like I do it, like from my models, like I have a lot of conglomerates now are going to start buying brands that are from people of color, cater to people of color. So we would create brands in that space. That's the next frontier in terms of creating brands that are catered to people of color. Those are the two main things that I've done, to be honest. If you want to sell this brand, what Unilever, P&G don't have in their portfolio? We look at it from a demographic point of view, not just they need, like what do they need in their portfolio, to be honest. Even stuff like that are not the only buyers, by the way. There's a lot of like PE firms that would buy, and their focus is either doing a roll up, they've bought one brand and they want to roll up, or because you're doing like good revenue, etc. like that. But even though in the back of your mind you want to sell, like the most thing is like still creating a great product. Like you still want to get like customers and focus on making sure you're driving consumers to your thing, because revenue is important. Because again, like even when it comes to valuation, I think there's some people that say, oh, it's usually like you get X times your revenue, but it's really, brands really goes like EBITDA. I think the revenue comes is when you start making like 100 million plus and stuff like that. But the smaller ones, when you're doing like 5-10 million, a lot of it's like EBITDA times a multiple for your valuation. So making sure you get like finances in a right, like your cost, making sure your gross margin is great. All of those kind of things are really, really important when you
What would
are.
you say is a great or a good gross margin?
Oh, it depends on the sector.
Could be a range, or what's terrible.
Terrible is like your single digits, like awful, like around like 25%. I would say there's a good um, thing, but margins is like you're looking at 70-75%. I would say, because you have to so think about like your margins, marketing, operations, all of those kind of things is really, really important. And obviously, as you scale, you benefit from the economy of scale and stuff like that. But yeah, getting all of that kind of thing is really, really important. That's why I said like get your financials on point, because when it comes to CPG, like pennies do a lot, you know. You think it's like one
Especially as
when it comes to like couriers and stuff like that, if you can save 10p and stuff like that, even though it sounds little, it saves you a lot. You can save like I remember we did that for one of our brands. I think it was like 20 something p we saved the couriers, and it saved us like 300k and stuff like that over the year.
Okay.
Yeah, so pennies count. So as someone says, like, yeah, if you look after your pennies, your pounds will count up or something like that. But yeah, so when it comes to CPG, that pennies really, really is important. So yeah, look at your margins at all things. If there's ways you can negotiate things with your suppliers, your manufacturers, always try to negotiate. Don't leave it like 2 years and you haven't negotiated. Like keep on saying, guys, obviously we've been doing well. Is there any ways that we can negotiate on the price? So yeah.
Now, one of the things that we love to do before we wrap up is just ask, throughout your journey, what are some of the things that have influenced you as an individual, shaped your mind? I know that you speak a lot about your faith and on your socials, but what is it? Do you have any key podcasts, resources that you've looked to across your journey?
Yeah, no, I've started to watch a lot of podcasts, and one is called Acquired.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you heard of it. Acquired is like brilliant. It's like 4 hours long,
Yeah.
but the depth that they go into in terms of each business is so important, because sometimes you see these huge businesses and you wonder like, how did they actually make it? Like I remember I found them because I was in my head, I was trying to like understand the business model of LVMH, like how Bernard Arnault like created it. And they did like a 4 hour something podcast on them, breaking down how Bernard did it. Like it was amazing. Like it really made me understand like how LVMH was formed and made. And there's another one called Good, Bad, Ugly Billionaire. Again, another podcast where it was like understanding how people have made it from 0 to 1 million, which is obviously one journey, and then from 1 million to 1 billion. And just understanding like their mindset, understand why they did it, how they did it, what they did. And I think that's really, really helped us. And really, I think when you're saying that in terms of our vision for it has evolved, it's because of these podcasts, because I understand like how people have actually scaled it from you're making $1 million brand to $1 billion brand and all of that kind of thing. So that's really, really, really helped. Faith for me has been an important factor in terms of what I do. I think it's grounded me a lot. I think it keeps me on the ball because sometimes the world praises you a lot and you get not fixated, that's the wrong word, but you start drinking your own Kool-Aid, as they say. But I think the faith and the Bible really helps me to understand like why am I doing it for? And even though the darkest moments where you're like, God, this is hard, whatever, it really revitalizes me. It gives me hope. You're doing something for a good thing, and at the end of the day, money and stuff like that is a byproduct. But at the end of the day, you're making a real impact. So praying, worshiping, reading the word has really helped me. And I don't know why I didn't realize this earlier, but the Bible's got so much wisdom. Like a
Oh,
lot of the books that you read, like a lot of it has is derivatives from like things in the Bible, which you wouldn't realize. So that's been a real help to me.
I would love to hear your thoughts. We've had Hailey Bieber's Road,
Yeah.
that was called. Also, we've had lots of celebrities who've carried out massive brands. Beyonce, Fenty. What would you say before Hailey Bieber, because that's more topical? What would you say is the one or two things that they've done right that our founders can kind of take on? Are there any tips from those experiences on the successful exits that you think our audience can take away with them?
Yeah, I think it's like the one thing that I think they've done right is they've got the fundamentals really right. Like with Hailey Bieber, they were very obsessive in terms of their customers and they were really innovative in terms of what they did. For example, there was that phone case with the lip gloss. Brilliant example of marketing. One of the things that I've seen is that it's very rare to just do this, but they only focus on 10 SKUs. Really, when you get a brand of that size, it's usually like 30, 40. Even when I was talking about Ren Beauty, they had loads of SKUs and they reduced it, cut 29 different products because they found that it was too complicated. Whereas Bieber, she created 10 products that were amazing. She was very focused on the customer and understood who her customers, and then all the marketing and everything like that was driven to make sure that we are appealing to this customer. They've done really well. Fenty again, they saw a use case and they looked the gap in the market and saw a lot of the brands weren't catering to people of all skin tones. They were like, we're going to create a brand that caters to all skin tones. And then I feel like with Rihanna, because she's got that relatability aspect, even though she's a superstar, people still see her as relatable. They created the marketing catered to her. One thing I would say about other brands that haven't done so well, you can see from the upside, stuff like Prime again, great example of a brand that grew really quickly. The only thing that I feel like they did wrong was that they didn't get the product right. If they got the product
Prime
right,
Dew? I don't know
yeah,
Prime.
or Prime's an energy drink.
Oh, okay.
So it's with KSI and Logan Paul or Paul Logan. And when it came out, every single person wanted Prime. So they got the aspect where they were like, marketing was right, FOMO was great. But what happened was, I don't feel the product was amazing. And I felt like that's the reason why, was it 2 years ago? Yeah, maybe 2 years ago, where everyone wanted Prime. And then now they were like discounting Prime. Like you could get Prime for like under £1 now. Where before, there was some news agent that was selling it for £10 and people would buy it for one bottle. But I feel like they've understood that, and I feel like if they're smart, they'll either acquire brands to build in their portfolio or just like really formulate their product to make sure that it is great. To be honest.
I love it. I love
okay.
it.
Thank you,
Thank you so
David.
much.
Tell us what you think of this episode on all of our platforms at the Startup Leap Pod. Do you have a question? Ask us and we'll ask our guests. Go to thestartupleap.io. See you next time.